Hello, everyone. Hello. I promised we would start on time. We have a couple of writers that need to leave fairly shortly, so I wanted to start on time. Before I get started, I will do a little light housekeeping here. I just want to remind you, I will be taking photos, and I imagine others will be taking photos as well. So there will be photos. There will be photos. This is being recorded, so we will be on. I guess it's our version of Zoom. And so it will be available online on the library website after this is over. So if you have friends that weren't able to come tonight, please let them know that they can see it. I don't know when it'll be available. Probably next week. Sometime. Yeah. So be sure to let them know. Bathrooms are right here. The bathroom is right here. And for a little light reading, there's plenty of books in there. And I would like you, if you can, readers, to stay within this area here, because we have people who will be watching from our library site. They won't be able to see you if you come clear out here. Your back will be to them. So if you can stay in this area, plus I'm going to be taking photos, and I don't want to take a picture of your back. I'd rather take a picture at least of your profile.
Do you want us to sit?
You can if you feel comfortable. If not, if you want to stand, but if you can stand within this area, it'd be fine. So either way, whatever you want to do. So thank you all for coming to the Writers Read celebration. I'm Nancy McCarthy, your host for the evening. This is the 6th year of our celebration, if you can imagine that. Some of you have attended every year. Some of you have at least one of you has written every year for this celebration. We're happy to see all of you again, and we're happy to see the new writers as well as those who have returned. The Writers Read celebration is organized by the library's Northwest Authors Series Committee. And the members of that committee include Phyllis Burt, who is the president of the library board. Phyllis is on Zoom tonight. You can't see her, but I'm sure she's waving. I am also on the committee, as well as Doug Sagano. Doug, you don't stand up? There he is. Okay.
Hi, Doug.
And Pam Crone is a member. She is in Japan right now. She may be actually even looking at us as we speak. Who knows? And Wanda Meyer Price. Wanda, please stand. And Wanda is responsible for many of those cookies that you are. We also had help from Cami Lira, who is works at the bookstore, Cannon Beach Book Company. She couldn't be here today because she is across the street acting in a play at the Coaster Theater. Wow. She's very talented. She's also a great singer. So without the help of our library manager, however, Jen Dixon, we would never have been able to pull this off. So
Hi, Jen.
We appreciate it. Yeah, it's wonderful to work with. So this year we chose the theme of beach noir. And you can thank Doug for that because he's the one that came up with it. So any challenge, any complaint you might have, please correct me. But many of you said you found it very challenging. It proved challenging for us to read too. Let's just say we had many interesting pieces. In fact, we kind of wondered what kind of people do we have? You might have wondered what we considered beach noir. In our flyers, we described the theme as taking place in a dark or foreboding setting, though the tone and descriptions can be unconventional and playful. Other elements may include flashes of humor, flawed underdog characters, or a crime scene. And you all used everything that we received 79 submissions. It's the most we have ever received in the 6 years we've been doing this, from 58 writers. We selected 16 pieces, and the pieces were selected based on how closely they followed the theme, their word usage, the writing style, the emotions that the piece evoked, and just how it affected us. Just what, was it something that we really wanted to show off? So each entry was limited to 600 words. And I have heard from a couple of writers that that was a challenge in itself, just limiting it to 600 words. I was told that flash fiction, which is one that we have, is less than 1,000 words. So a short story is usually maybe 2 or 3,000 words. So 600 words can be kind of a challenge. The committee chose pieces without knowing who wrote them, so it was completely blind selections. As you will hear tonight, these poems and short stories took a variety of turns. Some are serious, others are quite humorous, a few contain ghosts, and some follow the age-old noir slovenly detective versus alluring female client. One noir entry included cats, and for me that was a Tonight I will introduce the writers and they will read their entries. After everyone has read, I will open it up to the audience for comments and questions. So let's get started. The first person we're going to have read tonight is Kristen Damon. After spending 10 years living a bi-coastal life and traveling the world for her work in TV, Kristen left the industry and has spent the past decade on the Oregon coast. She loves being close to nature and is inspired daily by the moody weather and seaside, moody weather and the rugged landscape of her new home. Kristen enjoys a simple but connected life in Seaside with her husband and dog, Bubba. And I noticed in all of these intros, which I asked the writers to read, they named their dog. Their dogs. Yeah. One did name the cat. I always love the dog. The guy, this is my wife. And my dog, Henry. Okay. So, interesting group of people. She lives in Seaside with her husband and dog, Bubba, and is currently seeking representation for her debut novel. Tonight, Kristen will read her flash fiction, A Punishing Place, and we will have it on the screen as well, so you might want to follow along if you want to. If not, and from now on, I'm going to be reading from here because I managed to twist my knee this afternoon, so I'm going to sit over here. Anyway, please help me welcome Kristen.
Thank you. She's really funny. A punishing place. My name is Kristen. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be a part of this. I'm just going to get on with it. There's a bunch of people who need to read today. Yeah, here we go. Celeste heard a knock at the side door and took one last look in the mirror. She hardly recognized the woman staring back, her red lipstick a garish contrast against her pale skin and drab life. She stood, caressed her body where the green velvet hugged her curves. During a past passionate moment, Celeste had stolen a woman's husband. That choice had led her to this dark, desperate place. For now, the passion was gone, the damage was done, and he was left consumed with regret. The tall, dashing man she'd once known had become a slumped, sickly shell, and he was punishing her, keeping her hostage in this cold, wet version of hell. At the door, Elliot's hands shook and rain dripped off his parka. He began to remove it. No, she whispered, there won't be time after. Celeste reached her mouth to his so he could taste her. He smelled like the dive bar where she'd found him. She poured whiskey into she'd met him. She poured whiskey into 2 glasses. When it was gone, she poured again. Elliot's hands stopped shaking. She gestured to the nickel-plated revolver. Elliot picked it up, thumbing the small grooved lever to open the loaded chamber. He snapped it shut, shifting its weight in his hand. Upstairs, a soft glow shone from under the bedroom door. Celeste backed away. Elliot moved toward it. 3 shots rang out, then his footsteps down the stairs. Make it look convincing, she exhaled into his ear as she brought him close, having kept him hungry for this moment. He tore at her dress, ripping the seams to reveal her chest and bare shoulders. He reached into her hair as he kissed her, tearing through the careful styling. Water dripped off him into her eyes and mascara rolled down her cheeks. She pushed him back. The neighbors, the shots. He released her and looked anxiously at the door. She guided the gun back into his pocket. Come for me tomorrow. He ran his eyes over her, impatient, then crossed to the sideboard. She flipped on the porch light as he ran into the night, then slinked into the shadows and picked up her phone. My husband's been shot, she shrieked into the receiver. 871 Beach Drive, hurry. Next, she went to the kitchen, smashed Elliot's glass onto the floor, and took a long shard to the couch. She stabbed it against her throat and smeared her blood into the fabric. Celeste traded pine trees for palm trees that winter. Mrs. Brooks, said a familiar voice behind her on a hot January afternoon. She turned in her chaise and looked up. Long way from home, detective? Just following up on a few things. She flashed him a sultry smile and recrossed her long bronzed legs. We heard a different story from the perp after you left town. Why are you bothering me about it? Says you seduced him, convinced him to kill your husband. She laughed. His story did raise some questions. She turned back to the sea. You weren't seen in town that night. Why get dressed up? My husband was old, but surprisingly virile, detective. There's the matter of the second glass with your lipstick on it. She tensed. And your fingerprints are on the weapon. She relaxed. That's a lie. Not on the gun, the bullets. He left 2 in the chamber. Celeste walked to the edge of the surf and lifted her face to the sun as he cuffed her. She absorbed its warmth, letting the light seep in through her closed eyelids. If only the memory of this moment would be enough to sustain her in that dark, punishing place.
Remember, keep your hands off those bullets.
It's not just the gun, it's the bullets too, right?
Good question.
All right, our second reader, Destiny Deros. Deros. I'm trying to be fancy.
I love it.
Destiny Deros is the owner and sommelier, and I'm going to get that one wrong too, of Cheese, an intimate restaurant, a wine and cheese shop nestled in Seaside. Beyond her love for wine and gastronomy, Destiny finds solace and creativity in the art of writing. In her spare time, she indulges in crafting stories and essays, harboring aspirations to devote more energy to writing once she embarks on the next chapter of her life in retirement. You'll never have time, believe me. Please help me welcome Destiny, who will read a short story titled Dungeness Bisporus.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for letting me be a part. This is super exciting. So I'm not quite the writer that Kristen is, but here's to retirement. Dungeness Bisporus. Your crush is back, says a bratty waitress. I look across the restaurant and see my girl's bright red hair flaring against the turquoise ocean view. She's wearing the dress I love, deep purple with a heart-shaped neckline, showcasing her perfect breasts. Our eyes lock and I drink her in. Her husband takes the seat with the view, per usual. Thing is, she has the best view in the house, if I do say so myself. I plate the pickles in a beautiful pattern: cucumber, radish, cauliflower, mushroom. Her fat bastard husband loves the pickled mushrooms. He's always telling the waitress, "Don't skip me on the shrooms, sugar tits." Ugh. He makes my skin crawl. I can't wait to free her from his dangerous claws. Just a pinch could do the trick, I think to myself, inspired. I add a dash of Dungeness crab paste to the mushroom brine. She told me weeks ago he was deathly allergic to shellfish and refused to carry an EpiPen. By the time the paramedics arrive, his face is dark purple and the sneezing is finally stopped. I know immediately there's no going back. I'm terrified of the fallout, but find solace knowing I've saved her from a monster. The ambulance pulls away, lights and sirens fading into the distance. I hold my girl tight in my arms and whisper, "You're safe now." It's been 2 days. She hasn't called. I'm losing my mind. The door of the shop jingles open and I jump to see if it's her. It's not. "Chef Charlie Shaw?" police officer asks. "Yes, sir." "You're under the arrest for the murder of Harold Weston. You have the right to remain silent." I stand frozen as he handcuffs me. "She told us everything, Charlie. She shared your text messages and your letters. You knew Mr. Weston had a crab allergy. You were obsessed with his wife and wanted him out of the picture. Obsessed with her? What are you talking about? You were stalking Mrs. Weston. You murdered her husband so you could have her all to yourself. What the fuck was going on? I panicked. Did she tell him I was stalking her and used me to offer husbands so she could be rid of him and pin it all on me? The officer hovers over me, waiting for a response. I remember the secret recordings of our plan on my phone from the night she told me about his allergy. She'd been wanting to off him for years. I clear my throat and say to him, if I'm going down, that fiery bitch is coming with me. I'll tell you the whole story. A grin spreads across my face when I see her shuffle across the courtroom, feet shackled, dressed in orange. A good color on her, if I'm honest. She's thrown me under the bus, but I still love her. We're assigned to the same women's prison. Soon we'll be locked behind bars together forever. She'll finally be mine forever.
Very fun. Oh, murder with a twist.
Thank you.
All right. Kyra Blank is an author, youth pastor, and shepherdess living on the Oregon coast. Her work has previously been published in the Corvallis Advocate, Prison Magazine, and Whispers Among the Trees, an anthological work by Stern Castle Writers Collective. She is completing her first fantasy novel. Kyra's poetry often focuses on the struggle of living with invisible and mental illness and the stories of survivors and victims of abuse. She hopes to give a voice to those living without one and to spread awareness of the debilitating effects of these issues. Kyra lives on a multi-generational ranch in Siletz with her husband, parents, Pomeranian Hugo, border collie Sage, and many other animals, including her Valais black-nosed sheep. And thank God we don't have names for them. You can follow Kyra on Instagram at red-haired shepherdess. Tonight, Kyra will read her poem, Stay Alive.
I did one better. My dog Hugo's in the car. I thought about bringing him in.
Yeah.
So like she said, a lot of my work is centers on mental illness or things that people don't talk about. And so because of that, I'm just going to do a trigger warning for anybody who might have a history of domestic violence. There is some allusion to that in this poem. So I just want to let you be aware of that. Stay alive. He is dead. I'm opening my eyes to the sea, coming back to myself with rain on my face. The waves crash, soothing the inside of my soul, ravaged by the remnants of grief, rage. He is dead, and I'm heartbroken. I'm bruised from the inside out. I'll never see him again. I'll never hear his smile. While he holds me tight in his arms so tightly, I can't breathe. He is dead, and I am so tired. My grief is enormous, engulfing, expanding. It doesn't fit inside my pounding heart that beats a strangely familiar rhythm saying, stay alive, stay alive, stay alive. He's dead, and I'm shaking. My thoughts dance to the cries of the gulls in the skies. I yearn for him. I need him. I love him. I was never enough for him. Now I'm enough for no one. He's dead, and I'm enraged. How dare he be dead? How can it end so simply like this after all he did, after all I endured, after he redecorated the walls of our home with spots of crimson the shape of my head? He is dead, and I am laughing. And I sit in the sand, and I laugh, and I cry, and I watch the sun setting, throwing out colors like he threw out pain. The color of relief is sprayed across my face, and I see in prisms that reflect back to me from the water. The ocean is blue. The sun is orange. The clouds are pink. My hands are red. He is dead.
Brad Buckley is a professor at Portland State University. His research focuses on marine biology. And he has been studying the biology of the animals of the Oregon coast for his entire career. He was born and raised in Corvallis, but now lives in Portland. Brad says he loves Cannon Beach and the library. Of course, we like hearing that. Please help me welcome Brad Buckley.
Thank you. What's up? Yeah, I don't have a dog. I know. Nothing about that. I also grew up my mustache so I could look like a TV detective. All right, so this is called dark green waves. All right. The rain and salt air press against Detective David John's time-worn, deeply lined face. He craves a cigarette but is trying to quit and decides the wind off the ocean will make it impossible to light. He is staying at the weather-beaten motel up the street, the last place he was able to track her. He asked for the same room she had stayed in. It smells of mold, chemical cleansers, and cheap coffee. Sitting on the bed, he had tried to imagine her fear, her desperation. If he'd been able to track her here, so would someone else. He's been here 8 days. The local diner knows his usual breakfast, the local bars know his usual drink. He's pressed every bartender, server, grocery store clerk for any information on the girl he's trying to save. No one has offered anything useful. The town's small enough to employ a single cop. And he also has nothing to go on. Run away, he says. They come and go. Johns once again walks down the broken cement path to the beach, wet sand under his city shoes. Johns looks up and down the beach, looking for clues. He's always been good at this, but that was important. He knows that at this time of year, the currents move north to south. So he heads south along the seawall, the dunes, the grasses that in a later season will be full of clover. Ahead in the lowering light, he sees a drifted log that someone has used for a bench. Given the beer cans and cigarette butts scattered around it. An oyster catcher hunts along the tide line. Johns approaches the log and sits on it, trying to picture what the person who last sat there was thinking, and maybe thinking of doing. He spots a pink beret sticking out of the sand. The tide is rising and the waves are bringing more driftwood logs down the beach. John spots a log coming in his direction, but this log is wearing a red jacket. He rises, takes out his flashlight, and runs towards the red-jacketed log. He rushes into the surf, pulls it onto the beach, and above the seaweed marking the high tide line. The lights of fishing boats mark the horizon. The implacable lighthouse beacon revolves over the scene. It was the only witness to what happened here. And its mute, ethereal light does nothing to illuminate the crime or expose the guilty. John stares at the red-jacketed log for a minute. Then he takes out a cigarette, turns his back to the wind, and lights it. He takes several deep draws. The gulls are screaming. The dark green waves are pummeling the sea stacks. Johns pulls out his phone, dials his sergeant, and says, "I found her." I'm not that dark in real life.
All right, now for a little more light in our reading here. John Chiminella has a passion for cards, pickleball, and painting. He lives with his wife in a 1940 fixer-upper in Nacelle, Washington. His fixer-upper skills are minimal, and as such, he relives the many mistakes from this old house. He has various obscure talents like window painting, door making, and cultivating butterbur, a plant that needs no tending in his backyard. I take it that's a weed.
It's also known as Japanese spooky. It grows to the size of elephant ear. It's huge.
Oh my gosh. All right. Oh, who want to tend that anyway? He has been a graphic artist, a book scout, a book finder, and a book buyer all his life. John is also occasionally the proprietor of Uncle John's Books, the world's smallest bookstore in the cell. John will read his perfect short story, Bonnie and Mr. Clyde.
Thank you. Thank you. Bonnie and Mr. Clyde. I look each suspect in the eye. Bonnie sits to my right, Mr. Clyde to my left. Bonnie squints while Mr. Clyde stares at the table. He's watching an ant meander across the wood grain. Look, wise guys, I begin the investigation like someone who's learned his lingo from movies and TV. Are you going to come clean, or am I going to have to toss your sorry tales back in the crate? No response. It's like talking to the dead. Can either of you explain the puddle of blood on the carpet? Bonnie and Mr. Clyde look down at the table. The guilty cannot look me in the eye. The ant has now doubled back to make a figure eight. My suspects seem taken by the ant, ignoring my questions. I slap my hand on the table. Goodbye, ant. They flinch a little, their pupils open wide for fight or flight. Bonnie has always been the skittish one, the scaredy cat. I suspect she's the follower and Mr. Clyde the mastermind. And yet it is Bonnie who stares at me with malice as if I've just disturbed a pleasant daydream. And then, I swear to God, she opens her mouth wider than I thought possible, closes her squinty eyes, and delivers a weaponized yawn. Mr. Clyde seems to stifle a smile as if I set a clumsy trap obvious for all to see. I raise my hands in faux surrender. Hey, am I boring you too? Bonnie's blank gaze says it all as she begins to scratch behind her left ear. I need a drink. I need a vacation. I need this little talk like I need a cat scratch fever. In fact, the whole affair of blood, indifference, and blame makes me think I'm being toyed with like a giant ball of blood on the carpet, no body. The perfect crime. For the two of them, it's much ado about nothing. For me, it's Macbeth, the Tempest, and Lear all rolled into one. The two killing machines cast their shadows on the table as if born to the dark. Their power comes from silence and shadow. They look at me with marbled cat eyes. Welcome to the dark, they seem to say. This is our world. You have no power here. Be gone. I think they're right. What have I overlooked? The two of them sit like innocent, secure in their mutual alibis. If I didn't know better, they look like a pair of honest Abe's. Now, liars always lie. Deceivers deceive to the best of their ability. Oops, I missed my place. To the best of their ability, and the wicked could always conjure up 9 lives. But it's hard to tell the moment when someone honest becomes dishonest. Okay, you two, looks like you can go for now. I stand up in resignation. I know what you did, I just can't prove it. Today, I'm in the dark, but someday it will all come to light. You lap up this little mystery. It's probably good for your feline reputations. Bonnie begins to lick her paw as she displays her claws as if to show me the instruments of the crime. I think I see a little blood on the sharpened tips. Mr. Clyde stretches his body across the table, turns with a lithe and silent movement, and then leaps to the floor to disappear. Bonnie watches me for a few moments, then purrs and sidles up to rub her fur and tail through my hands as she works her way back to my good graces. I got a little illustration of Bonnie.
David Dillon is a retired Navy officer living in Manzanita. He was the first editor of the North Coast Citizen newspaper and helped found the Hoffman Center for the Arts in Manzanita. He served on the Hoffman board for 16 years. David particularly enjoys writing stories or vignettes, fiction or nonfiction. His story, The Knife, was prompted by a friend's discovery of a knife on the trail over Neocani Mountain. Tonight, David will read his short story, The Knife. Please help me.
As Nancy said, it was prompted by a friend, Tom Bryant, discovered this knife, and they posted it on a Facebook news group that I run. It's called North County News. And I saw that. He said, I found this knife. Anybody missing one, let me know. And I dashed off a little note saying, hey, let's start to a story. and then forgot about it. And then publicized Beach Moore, and it flashed the whole story, the whole arc, brought shot up in my mind. I mean, I went. So anyway, first off, I have the dog Ursa and Sally, and the cat's name is Waverly. So, my glasses on. I'd like to give a shout out to my friends at the Hoffman Center and writers closer to home. My wife Lori here and our friend Norma Seelig, who is just around the corner from us. So tonight, on an overcast afternoon in late November, a man crested the trail over Neoconi Mountain, headed towards Manzanita. At the top, he came upon a wooden bench. It was the ideal place for hikers to rest. A break in the trees showcased the ocean below. The man stopped and sat. He was in no hurry to finish his trek. As he appreciated the respite and admired the scenery, the man noticed a knife stuck in the ground to his right. It was buried up to its hilt. Curious, he pulled it out of the dirt. The corroded blade was attached to a faded white handle marred by several small cracks. It was about a foot long and obviously old. As the man examined the knife, the soothing sounds of the distant waves and light wind were suddenly disturbed by a rustling in the bushes behind him. A gloved hand suddenly swooped down from his left, knocking the knife from the man's hand. Before he could react, a curved sword came around. It's from the right, stopped right at his neck. The man's head was jerked backwards. He looked up at a skeleton face, upside down. It wore a faded bandana. Wheezed the hideous creature, its breath foul, pus dripping from cracked lips. Later that afternoon, a state trooper on northbound patrol up Highway 101 noted a lone car parked at one of the turnouts on Neoconi Mountain. Around midnight, the same trooper, southbound this time, saw the car was still there. He pulled over to investigate. No one was around, so he ran the plates. The car belonged to a Manzanita man. The trooper wrote a no overnight parking ticket, stuck it on the windshield, and left to finish his shift. The car was still there 2 days later. Local police checked with the man's neighbors. He hadn't been seen for at least 3 days. A missing person report was filed. Search and rescue teams scoured the surrounding forest and cliff tops. A Coast Guard helicopter searched the beach and waters below the mountains. No sign of the man was ever found. Eventually, his disappearance was added to the many mysteries of Neoconi Mountain, including lost hikers, suicides, and legends of pirates and buried treasure. On a sunny morning in early March, a woman crested the trail over Neoconi Mountain while hiking towards Manzanita. At the top, she came upon a wooden bench and sat down. She noticed a knife stuck in the ground beside the bench. Curious, she pulled it out of the dirt. That Tom found. So it's based on a real story. It is. I think I better return it.
I like show and tell. Tell and show. Pamela Gibson is primarily a mixed media artist, but she did win a poetry contest in Mrs. Rice's third grade class. Her poem was about grass and its feelings when walked upon. The prize was a package of Hostess Twinkies, and she was hooked. She has been writing poetry ever since biting into those sweet treats. Pamela lives and works in her studio gallery in Seaview, Washington. She is 3 blocks from the ocean, and often lines of poetry come to her during her early morning walks on the sparkling sand. Tonight, Pamela will read her poem, Just Another Beach Town Murder.
I feel I have to say that I have a Labradoodle named Henrietta. Just another sleepy beach town murder. It's always a bookstore, a body, and a coffee. Blood oozes from her center. She is splayed in the dark, dank alley. Her bleached blonde hair circles a pretty face. Rivulets of carmine pool on her chartreuse coat. Oddly, a beautiful, abstract tableau. There's a cat, of course, black and shiny, sprawling on the counter, eyeing customers as a security camera. She scratched a loud, grumpy man yesterday. There was a mediocre uproar and a free book. I am the chubby detective searching the body for clues, fingernails, identification, weapon, a random act of violence, so popular now. Does anyone recognize her? Was she looking at books earlier? Did she have an espresso? Why was she in the alley? Dropped there after the kill? Who found her? An anonymous tip from the only phone booth left in America. It is a small, popular beach town with a small, unpopular police force. So far, no one saw anything, heard a noise, or knows who she is. We hear the roar of the ocean hitting ashore, the main drag so close to the mighty Pacific. Did she arrive expecting a romantic rendezvous, to meet a friend, to celebrate an occasion? Where, to begin, her shoes are full of wet sand. Did she walk on the beach alone or accompanied by her murderer? Both customers and employees alike don't seem upset. Do bodies appear in their alley often? They continue to browse the books, read magazines, and drink coffee. Recently transferred to Seaport, Oregon, and informed it was a sleepy place, chock full of art galleries and upstart restaurants, this incident was unexpected. I am asked if I would like a latte by a pale woman dressed as Wednesday. The wishes I would evaporate. Well, sure, why not? It was going to be a long, lonesome night. Staffing couldn't hurt. Alexa plays music, mostly jazz. The body lies alone but covered. I have been informed there is only one coroner responsible for several beach towns along this vast stretch of coastal highway. I start the interviews with dirty looks from everyone. The cat slithers by and hisses at me. Suddenly, a red-faced man in a trench with wet sand on his trousers rushes in, out of breath. The door slams behind him. Is it Mora? He says.
We have Craig Allen Heath on Zoom. All right. Craig
Hi,
Allen.
Craig.
Hi, Craig. Craig Allen Heath decided he wanted to be a novelist at age 14. He achieved that goal 50 years later, better late than never, by publishing his first novel, Where Will You Die, in 2022. He lives in Southwest Washington with his wife, Pat. Yay, she got that name. Too much lawn to mow, a vegetable garden, and a mischievous pair of doggos, Shepherd, Lobo, and Husky Aura, whose antics earn them the nicknames Thing 1 and Thing 2. Craig is now working on Killing Buddhas, the sequel to his first story about Alan Wright in Eden Ridge. Ideas for other books form a lengthy list. He hopes for enough eyesight and breath to write the good ones. Help me welcome Craig Allen Heath, who will read the short story, Farewell, My Sandcastle.
Hi, everybody. Am I coming through okay? Can you hear me?
Fine. Great.
Yep.
Oh, maybe-
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thanks so much to welcoming me for the second year to this, and the kind folks at Cannon Beach Library for inviting me back. And I'm really glad to be here, even if I'm pixelated, and if I can get an invite for next year, I'll try to show up in the flesh. I really enjoyed the theme prompt this year because I love to write parodies, and the hard-boiled detective narrative style is great for that. I mean, it's practically a parody in itself. So, with a tip of the fedora to Raymond Chandler, my story is titled Farewell, My Sandcastle. The grimy black telephone on the dusky desk in my grubby office rang like a drum corps banging on cookpots. The ancient office chair squealed in complaint as I sat up groggy from a hot cocoa-induced nap, grumbling a curse as I grabbed the handset. Hayward Rock, beach detective, I growled. Lost cell phones spotted, kite nappers nabbed, dog walkers derelict in duty duly done. Mr. Rock, this is Annabelle Elk. Her voice was smooth and warm like a shot of good cocoa. I'm with the Sandcastle Contest Committee, and we need your help. Huh. What's the matter? Somebody bury grandma? A beach pail? A beach pail not regulation size? Oh, nothing that exciting. But we believe one of the contestants may have used AI for their entry. I chuckled. That seems unlikely, Mrs. Elk. Miss Ann Elk. Oh, sorry, Miss Elk. It's just that for all the hype and hoopla around AI, push come to pull, algorithms are too stupid to pound sand. That may be so, Mr. Rock, but we'd really like you to come down and see for yourself. A sawbuck per diem, plus expenses. And fair warning, I drink a lot of cocoa. Miss Elk agreed too easily. Half the folks who ring my bell bail when talk turns to my per diem, but everybody's got to make a living, and a seaside Seamus with my experience and beach smarts commands top dollar. And I wasn't lying. I drink a lot of cocoa. I stopped in at Sleepless Sam's for a cup of his best. He spots me a tab and doubles up on the whipped cream. By the time I got to the beach, I was sporting a Kris Kringle mustache, so I wiped my mouth on the sleeve of my cheap knockoff Gayabera shirt and spotted a woman walking toward me waving. I raised the cup in salute and sandaled her away, sneaking a long sip of my now tepid ambrosia. She was tall for a dame, lanky, like a thoroughbred, draped in one of those handkerchief ham beach dresses that made it clear her legs went all the way to the ground, as if God made them to do exactly that. Tanned, of course, but it wasn't from a bottle or a bed, just her and old Saul spending lots of quality time together. Mr. Rock, I'm Ann Elk. Oh, you are? Well, then just give me a minute and I'll put on my antlers. She tilted her head like the RCA Victor dog. I'm sorry? Never mind, bad joke. Where's your simulated sand sculpture? She led me past several contestants, crews putting finishing touches on castles and crabs, lobsters and limpets, pyramids and porpoises. She stopped and pointed to a roped-off area. That one, Mr. Rock. I looked it over and nodded my head, a ruse that makes me look like I know what I'm doing when I'm stumped and speechless. I took a sip of my cocoa to stall longer and nodded again. This? Yes. I nodded one more time, knowing that was the last stall I could pull off. I mumbled. The design was typical of a sandcastle school you might call beach people realism. A boy running along the strand, getting his kite off the ground. Realistic, yes. But the boy looked in 3 different directions from 3 eyes. The hands holding the kite line were 12-fingered, and the kite was an uncannily accurate sculpture of a dead albatross. It's imaginative, I said. Yes, she said, hallucinatory. Thank you.
Greg, your sandcastle will be in the mail.
Thank you.
Mike Cloak is a short story writer and chef living on the Oregon coast. When he is not writing, cooking, or hanging out with an awesome abstract artist and Sydney the Torby, he can often be found walking along the rack line on the lookout for shy sea monsters and talkative seagulls. Mike will read a short story, Lost in Limbo. Please welcome him.
I do not have a dog. I do have a cat.
Hey, what's his name?
Sydney.
Hi, Sydney.
Sydney's sitting home alone going, when are they gonna come and bring me some food?
Of course, what they always say.
And she has to wait till tomorrow. This is Lost in Limbo. I settled in on my usual bar stool. Jay handed me my usual makers. A good-looking lady left this for you about an hour ago. Slid a folded sheet of paper sealed with gold wax across the bar. Never seen that around here before. I broke the seal. You are my only hope, it read. This is a matter of life and death, mine. There is a driftwood fort at the south end of the beach. Meet me there at sunset. I'm counting on you. V. How long till sunset? About an hour. Are you going? Duty calls. You better pour me a double. I drained the glass, grabbed my jacket. Let's see what fate waits. I could see the fort hidden against the cliff at the end of the beach. Smoke rose from gaps in the logs. A chilled mist was settling in, joining the growing dusk. I pulled my collar tighter and ducked inside. Thank God you came. I don't know how much time I have. She handed me a mug. Makers, right? To get to point, someone is trying to kill me off. They want to make me vanish. You have to find them and stop them. The dust, the mist, the smoke, it all made me hard to focus on her face. The voice was hushed by the roar of the surf. You think someone wants to hurt you? No, they don't want to hurt me. They want to make it so I never existed in the first place. Okay, try to stay calm. Tell me everything from the beginning. This person, do you know who they are? Not really. One day, everything and everyone started disappearing. My memories began to fade away. Now this place is all I have. I think they've forgotten about me here. I don't know, maybe I knew them once upon a time. So how did you find me? Everyone knows you, the great detective. You never fail to solve the case. They say you were always at that bar, so I left you a message. And how'd you end up here? I'm not really sure. When everything began to disappear, I found myself here. She bolted up suddenly, backing up, pointing. What is that? A dusky seagull had wandered into the fort, looking both alarmed and amused, as only seagulls do. A seagull, just hungry as always. She looked scared and confused. The answer was starting to come to me. It's okay. He's mostly harmless. Sit down. Tell me this. What was the first thing you remember? I was talking to Anna as we left the church. We walked arm in arm through the river park. And after that, that's all I know. We were destined to be great friends, I'm sure of it, but after that, everything just stopped. No one is trying to kill you. This just isn't your story. If you want to live a long life, you need the writer to fall in love with you. Your writer hasn't done that. Maybe they will someday, maybe not. I've seen too many characters stuck in the back of a desk drawer gathering dust. Waiting, hoping. It's late. I should be going. May the pen take up your name again someday. I left the fort and started back up the beach. The wind picked up, moonbeams broke through the mist. Up ahead, an old man leaned up against a driftwood stump, playing an old battered saxophone, the notes twirling possibilities in the air. My lover began to write a new adventure.
All writers have that problem one way or the other. All right. Colleen Medlock lives and works in the Portland suburbs, but lives part-time in Seaside, driving down with her dogs, who I think are nameless, family, or alone at least once or twice a month to enjoy the coast. She has been teaching language arts and history classes to middle school and high school students in Beaverton for 20 years. Oh my God. And writes mostly as a hobby. Colleen's nonfiction book, A History of the City of Beaverton, was published in 2012, and she recently finished a young adult mystery novel set during the Battle of Gettysburg. She was drawn to this year's theme of beach noir because she saw it as a way to combine her love of the beach, history, and mystery. Give a warm welcome to Colleen, who will read her story, Anniversary.
When I wrote that, I did have 2 dogs. We lost one of our dogs 3 weeks ago. He was 16. That was Blue, but we do still have a dog, Bailey, who is a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. We have a dog still. It's called Anniversary. On the bluff, sorry, can you start over? On the bluff above the beach, all was dark, save for a single lantern on the porch of the last cabin. Hank slipped his feet into his rubber boots and buttoned his coat against the chill, then grabbed the lantern and headed down to the beach, where a single campfire flickered in the crisp October air. The couple didn't look familiar to Hank. "Hey there," he said, making sure to keep his lantern between himself and the sea. "Kinda late to be out on the beach." The young man squinted up at him. "Is it closed?" "No, just not safe," Hank said. He glanced uneasily at the rolling waves behind him. "Why not?" "Just put the fire out, son." "You can't have a fire?" "There was no sign." Hank shook his head. "It's October 25th, so you can't have any light out here tonight." The young man stared at Hank for a moment and then scrambled to his feet. "What's this all about? No light on October 25th? Not safe? Is this some kind of joke?" Hank sighed. They must not know. They weren't like those irritating reporters or non-believers who sometimes come to town to mock the townspeople. This young couple wasn't from around here, and they really didn't know. "Look," Hank said, "do you see anyone else out here? You know what's best for you. You will put out that fire and get off this beach. I don't have time to explain." He turned to leave, careful to keep his lantern shielded from the ocean. "Wait," the young woman said. She looked intently at Hank. "Why not?" Hank glanced toward the dark vastness of the ocean. A light mist was forming. They needed to get off the beach, and soon. "I'm not putting out a perfectly good fire without an explanation," said the young man. Hank sighed and turned back around. "All right. It was October 25th, 1908, he said quietly. The ship was returning from a trading journey to Mexico when it foundered right out there on the shoal. We stay off the beach on this night because they are determined to take revenge on this town." "They?" said the young woman, eyes growing wide. "Crew. They want revenge on this town for not coming to their rescue, for letting them all drown out there within sight of the beach." "Oh, it's a ghost story." The young man rolled his eyes and added another log to the fire. Hank's eyes flashed. "They return every anniversary of the shipwreck, like clockwork. This town may be cursed, but we haven't lost anyone in 2 decades because we make sure we're off the beach and have our lights out as soon as the sun goes down on this day each year. If the beach is dark, they wander the sand up to the bluff, but are gone by daylight. If someone is on the beach," he trailed off, remembering. The woman stared at Hank, mouth open, while the young man snickered and poked at the fire with a stick, sending crackling trails of sparks fluttering into the night sky. "I don't believe in ghost stories," he scoffed. The woman stepped closer to Hank. "I don't know if what you said is true, but I'll get him to put out the fire," she whispered. "See that you do." Hank turned and walked quickly back up the bluff, extinguishing his lantern as he reached his cabin. In the distance, a fully rigged, two-masted clipper glided silently out of the mist toward the beach. All hands on deck.
Thank you. Jennifer Nightingale once again was selected to read her poetry in the Writers' Read celebration. Even though this is a blind selection process, her work has been chosen every year. Jennifer said that each year challenges her with themes that seem impossible. She tries anyway because, she says, this event is one of the most welcoming and inspiring events on the North Coast, and that says a lot. Jennifer lives in Astoria in a little house overlooking Young Bay. She is growing old, her words, not mine, with her husband, Holt Moore, and spotted dog, Mickey. In Seattle, they have a granddaughter named Rowan who loves blueberries and the color yellow. In 2019, Jennifer's coming-of-age novel, Alberta and the Spark, was published. She is continually nurtured by her writing friends, especially those at Rick's Open Mic. Jennifer says she is grateful for Writers' Read for, quote, kicking me in the butt year after year. Tonight, Jennifer will read two poems, Abandoned and Bistro Table. Please help me welcome Jennifer.
All on my face. Oops. End up in your lap. Thank you, Nancy. I got some glasses. That always helps. Abandoned. An ominous 10-foot tide at midnight dumped live crustaceans to rest in beds of eelgrass and stranded millions of shiny moon jellies in temporary tide pools that shrank to puddles until they went dry, leaving behind gelatinous blobs breaded in dirty gray grit. Their surfaces cracking, they lay helpless in this inhospitable desert. Serrated claws, the shells of burnt orange bodies and exposed bellies bore witness to the mindless violence of this careless tide. Dungeness crabs of all sizes were flung from the rack line to the river's edge, abandoned by the night tide to die among detritus in a waterless world. Purple sea stars begged for water as they stiffened under the morning light, their ochre hues fading to a gray as grim as death itself. In the river, the red buoy bell bent and bowed westward, chiming a two-note lament for the passing, for all of those that died on the rippled moonscape, left by the quick retreat of a rare spring tide. Terns chased eagles and dogs chased balls. The surf licked the sand and pulled what she could, reclaiming the carcasses of all the creatures that she left to suffer and dry under the deep, dark midnight sky. All right, on a shorter note, the bistro table. It's rare to see a bistro table with its legs in the sand. This one came with a red umbrella. The wind tugged at it, but it did not tip. There were two chairs at the table, a bottle of local wine and two glasses, filled with some sort of crimson fluid. They were left to breathe while the lady tidied up the surface. The other chair was empty. Wind tugged at the lady's long black skirt. The sun warmed the pearls around her neck. One linen napkin was tucked around the bottle. A pair of pricey binoculars were at the ready. while the woman in black fiddled with a packet of poison in her hands.
Di Lou Raymond is a writer of novels, short stories, editorials, and a comic, and resides in Neskowin. Di is currently working on her second novel, Opal Pretending, set in Europe during World War II. She previously published the novel Dodging Africa, influenced by her 6 years living and working in Botswana and her 15 years in Boston. Di's award-winning short story, Rain Woman, is published in anthologies including Eyes on Africa and Patterns of Africa. Di will read her short story, The Bartender, tonight. Please help me welcome her.
Everyone. The bartender. What an idiot, Lauren scoffed at herself, driving in this weather at night. The pounding rain and blackness distorted the road markers. She squinted, slowing more, a danger alarm pounding in her temples. If she crashed, no one would ever find her. Just a skeleton in a ravine covered by brush, discovered in 50 years by a logger. Henry was gone, one less egg to fry, and no one to care if the road ends for me. Okay, she said out loud, stop the pity speak. Next sign of civilization, I'm stopping. 5 minutes later, a smudge of light broke the darkness on Highway 101. She pulled in, tires crunching on the gravel. Pushing open the door, she realized it was more a tavern than a restaurant. Christ, she whispered. Coastal taverns were often hangouts for locals who didn't always appreciate strangers. Surveying the room, she made eye contact with the bartender. He'd once been handsome, she thought, but now was grizzled in the way coastal people become, who've gotten the short end a few too many times. But his eyes were kind and welcoming. Mind if I sit out the storm? Lauren asked. Not a bit. White wine? God, no. Whiskey sour. The bartender looked at her longer than he should have. Coming right up for Portland, lady. That's 2 strikes. He shook the drink, the ice clinking loudly. Seattle? You just struck out. I'm farther south on the coast. Suddenly the lights shut off. Lauren gasped, still jumpy from the drive. It's okay, coastal lady. He found her hand in the dark and put the glass into it. Lauren held her breath. His touch was electric, her skin so long untouched. Soon dots of candlelight filled the bar area. Restroom? Lauren asked, looking around. The bartender pointed to a corner. Past those booths. I'll follow with a candle. Lauren nodded as though it were usual to have an escort. When she returned, the bartender and his candle were gone. A female bartender came out of the back room. What can I get you, honey? Oh, the same thing the other bartender gave me, a whiskey sour. What other bartender? You been at another bar tonight? No, the guy who just walked me to the restroom. The female bartender snickered, then caught herself. Honey, I own this bar and I'm the only one working tonight. Nobody else can get here because of the storm. It's just us gals. Okay, this is weird. You okay, honey? The barmaid saw the same gray eyes and dark circles on Lauren as on her own face when it shone back in the mirror, from eyes wishing they'd seen much less. Just then the lights flickered on, and Lauren saw the picture taped to the mirror behind the bar. It was him, the disappearing bartender. Who's that? The female bartender turned around and looked at the picture anew.
even though it had broken her heart 1,000 times. That's Trent, my husband, died in a car accident last year, night like tonight. Lauren sucked in her breath. I'm so sorry, she choked out. And I'm sorry too, honey. I can tell you've lost something just as big. Lauren nodded, her throat tightening in the now familiar way. You're staying put tonight, honey. I got a room out back. Lauren nodded, lifting her drink. The ice clinked loudly against the glass, the sweet and sour debating among the cubes. A gust of wind rattled the old window, the rain and despair fighting to find a way in. Not tonight.
Noir with ghosts. All right.
Lots of drinking going on.
I know. I'm bartender.
Florence Sage is the MC and regular reader at the monthly Rick's Open Poetry Mic in Astoria. She has been a poetry columnist for Hip Fish Monthly, a founding producer of the annual Fisher Poets Gathering in Astoria, and a poetry presenter for dozens of area literary events. Her full-length poem collections are Nevertheless, Poems from the Gray Area, 2014, The Man Who Whistled, The Woman Who Wished, a Polish-Canadian story, 2021, What to Do with Night, Poems, 2023. Her collections are available at local booksellers and libraries. Please help me welcome Florence Sage, who will pose a question in her poem, Where's the Noir?
Okay, first my dog. Chocolate named Luca. Just turned 3 years old, so he's really feisty. And tonight he's with my daughter's 2 coonhounds, and they're having a pajama party without pajamas. A naked pajama party. And I just had cataract surgery 2 days ago. So let's see what happens. That doesn't matter. Thank you for inviting me, especially since I wrote a kind of anti-noir poem. I think I'm talking about a lot of people in this room. Where's the noir? She's no dame, and she doesn't blow smoke. Noir just doesn't work. No pencil skirt or fitted suit or spiky heels with her. No crimson smear on her lips and cheeks. None of that goes on the Western coast. She won't call you Buster and slap your face. She'll call you Tiffany. She hasn't a hit job for you to do either, or an urgent investigation. She doesn't pack heat, she packs mittens. She walks in storms on blowing sand to take the fighting wind with grace. For protection, wool and Gore-Tex and how. Her romping dog is what quickens her pace, not fear of shadows over her shoulder or sudden revolvers. North Coast woman on river and beach, she is fearless, wet, windswept, and messy, watching the sky change, listening to waves and the stories composing in her head. Nose in a book in a cafe, rubber boots and fishing pants for the rain, sockeye and cocoa on her dinner plate. She's no thriller. Go look for noir somewhere else.
Oh. Has to be one in every crowd. James A. Tweedy is an author, classical poet, and retired pastor who has lived and worked in California, Utah, Scotland, Australia, Hawaii, and presently in Long Beach, Washington. As an author, among his 16 published titles are 6 novels, 4 collections of poetry, and 1 collection of short stories, all with Dunecrest Press. His stories and award-winning poetry have appeared in regional, national, and international anthologies both in print and online. His short story collection, Long Beach Short Stories, has sold over 1,300 copies, and his most recent book, Laughing Matters, is a humorous collection of over 140 formal poems, 40 of which are sonnets. James will tackle tonight's theme with his story, Silhouette.
Oh, how fun to be with you. My dog Daisy was born in Hawaii and traveled all the way to the Pacific Northwest, is now buried in our yard under a whole bunch of daisies, of course. So we still remember her, and my story has absolutely nothing to do with my dog. My story is called Silhouette. And just as an aside, when I first used this word some years ago in another story, I had to look it up because how do you spell the word silhouette? I now know how to spell it, and I'm proud to have it in my canon. I didn't have to look it up. So here we go. That's a tricky word, those French things. All right, here we go. I won't go so far as to say the North Oregon coast goes into hibernation during the winter. But on weekday mornings, at least, the town of Cannon Beach does a lot of yawning. Life may not slow all the way down to a crawl, but except for the occasional jogger, anyone walking faster than a stroll is probably an out-of-town visitor from someplace like Portland. Yawning, of course, is contagious. And when I entered my Cannon Beach office at 10 o'clock on a Monday morning in early February, I was yawning enough to trigger a pandemic. Business was slow. The lettering on the outside of my door says, Dashiell Hammer, private eye, knock before entering. But I can't say that anyone but me has gone in or out of that door for over a week. I just opened my lower left desk drawer and wrapped my hand around a bottle of Captain Morgan when the distant droning hum of surf was interrupted by a robust rap on the door. Before I could close the drawer and say, come in, the door flew open so suddenly I expected to see J. Edgar Hoover and a dozen armed FBI agents bust in on a raid. There were no G-men, of course. But in the doorway stood the silhouette of the shapeliest dame I had seen since Jean Harlow starred with James Cagney in The Public Enemy. As the silhouette stepped into the office, it moved from the silver screen into Technicolor faster than Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. Her tight red dress reached to mid-calf. A double strand of pearls wrapped around her neck, topped off with short blonde hair and a black, broad-brimmed hat tilted slightly to the side, accented with a small red feather that flamed like a midnight bonfire on the beach. Her eyes were hidden behind a pair of Gucci shades, but her crimson lips were on full display, turned up at the corners in a whimsical smile. Can I help you? I asked, trying to sound as cool and nonchalant as possible. No, she answered as she claimed the chair in front of my desk as if it were a throne. I'm here to sell Girl Scout cookies. I recommend the trefoils. Shortbread melts in my mouth, if you know what I mean. The sarcasm filled the room like custard in a devil dog.
Oh,
I'll take 2 boxes, I answered lamely. Make it 3 and I'll offer you a job, she countered. Depends on the job, I said, knowing full well that I couldn't afford to turn anything down that had the possibility of money attached. My late husband was a taxidermist for the New York Museum of Natural History, she explained.
Yesterday, someone broke into my apartment and stole his most valuable possession, a rare bird of prey he collected from an island in the Mediterranean. It wouldn't happen to be a falcon, I asked, as I glanced around the room, wondering if I was on candid camera. In response, she removed her glasses. Her brows squeezed together and her eyes narrowed into two slits. The expression on her face seemed familiar, as if I had seen it somewhere before. And then I remembered. You're Brenda, I laughed, from the Coaster Theater. Happy birthday, Dash, she smiled as she removed her hat and wig. Happy birthday from your friends at the pub. The lady was sharper than a number 2 pencil before a test. And I got the point. Because the joke was on me.
All right. Our last writer for the night is Gregory Shumler, is an author, award-winning playwright, and freelance writer living in Ocean Park, Washington, with his wife and editor Ruth and a former bookstore cat named Dorian Gray. His work has appeared in local newspapers and magazines, including the 2023 edition of Our Coast and a coffee column for Coast Weekend. Gregory has written more than a dozen books, including 2 humor anthologies, the 4-part Bayou Boys Adventure series, and the regional favorite, Louis the Lonely Lighthouse, as well as his recent nonfiction works on Is the Church on Target or on the Toilet? And Love, Joy, and Peace. His newest work, a nonfiction book titled Off, is due out in May. He has a short humor piece in the 2024 Rain magazine. Gregory will round out tonight's readings with his short story, Sandy Shores.
Many hard acts to follow. Wonderful tonight. The office radiator hadn't worked since the beginning of the Truman administration 2 years ago. Still, it was hot here. Even with the winter weather, beach weather outside, trying to bore our wet, icy fingers into the thin clappered walls. Yeah, it was hot, but not as hot as the dish before me, nor the diamond she poured out on my desk. From the moment the dame darkened the door of my seedy uptown PI office, I knew that Sandy Shores was trouble. Listen, baby, who are you really? And why are you here? I had questions, see? All you have to know, she replied, twirling her ostentatious pearl necklace, is that I'll pay you well. I don't work for cheap, dollface. I can tell by looking at your office. Her sarcastic tone. I'm up and coming, I justified. So you could use the cash then. I sat down on the edge of my desk, after clearing back the moldy Chinese takeout cartons. Sweep my hand, I indicated that she sit in my office chair. Hey, that's all I had except for the empty water cooler, the broken down coat rack, and the overflowing wastebasket. Sure, what do you got, sugar? She remained standing. Diamonds. I can see that. The name like Sandy Shore, I figured you'd be paying me in clams. Anyways, what kind of case you got for me? Well, I got here is my makeup case, and how can I help you? Oh, that. Well, my fiance has fallen in with a bad crowd. They've been running heists for a couple of months, and I haven't seen him for nearly a week. That unusual? No, he's always been a little rough around the edges, and I like my boys bad. Is it unusual not seeing him for that long? I'm used to seeing him almost every day. Until this week? Yes. Got names for any of the other fellas? No. Are they working out of a particular place, a hideout? I don't know. Do you have a plate number for a getaway vehicle? No. You're a real wealth of information, Have you ever heard of Alexa? AI hasn't been invented yet. Oh. What jobs have they pulled? That I know. Oh, go on. Well, there was this furrier boutique downtown, she said, flipping at the mink stole around her neck. And the gin joint out on First, the sticker store, the donut shop. I guess one of the guys is a crooked cop. And a high-end jewelry store down on Park. Something was fishy about Sandy Shores, so I cast out a line. What's that airline ticket doing sticking out of your purse, babe? Going somewhere? What's it to you? I have an inquiring mind and I put a few things together. Oh, can you put together an IKEA nightstand? Because no! I'm talking about your case. My guess is that it was you who are responsible for the missing fiance, quite possibly his friends. You're dressed to the nines, baby. I'm guessing the stole was stolen with the diamonds. And who walks around with loose diamonds? My thinking tells me that you, as the ringleader, heist the heisters, put the hit on them, got rid of the bodies, and are here to frame them before you blow town. Suddenly, the hot dish became a hot mess. She hastened toward the door to leave. I grabbed her by the wrist, dashed her to my chair. I picked the ticket from her purse and read, Sandra Parker, you are under arrest. Sometimes diamonds aren't a girl's best friend.
All right, well, thank you all for reading for us. We have a few more minutes. I'd like to ask if the audience has any questions or comments or anything. Any questions? Going once?
I have a question. Does Craig Allen Heath actually drink that much cocoa?
Craig, are you still with us?
I am, and I would drink that much cocoa if I could, but it's sort of what do you want to say? Wish fulfillment by putting it into the story. It's like the Philip Marlowe sort of story of he drinks a lot of whiskey, right? So I threw in the cocoa thing to make that the whiskey.
It was fun.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? I have a couple of questions. I want to know how you approached the theme this year, the writers approached the theme this year. Did you look at it as a challenge? Did you look at it as like, oh my God? Or what made you actually want to try this out?
I'd never written anything like it before. And even, like I told you before, I didn't even know what noir was. I had to Google it. So it was a really interesting, cool challenge to do something I'd never done before.
How about anybody else?
Well, I on the opposite side, I've always been a fan of film noir. I've seen a lot of the films, and I enjoyed that dark side of story. Some of the film noir they're just classic movies. Wonderful.
So one had a major challenge and one had something that they really enjoyed doing. That's interesting.
I just thought it'd be fun, particularly when I saw the way it twisted at the end of it.
Yeah.
Throw all these imagery into the start of it, tie it in with the real supposed history of the economy, and then at the end,
Yeah, it was made for fun, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Made for a twist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
twist and the knife to go well together, right?
Yeah. Let's do that. All right. A lot of you had published works before. So how does this experience differ from what you were used to writing?
I think it's because there were parameters and, when you're writing, you develop your own personal parameters, whatever those might be. But when they're handed to you and the challenge of the 600 words, kind of makes me wonder if I'm putting too many words in some of the things that I'm writing, but yeah, having that structure was challenging but fun. And I have never done anything like mystery or detective or anything in that realm. So yeah,
kind of stretched you a little bit.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
Anybody else? Any other?
I would agree with the parameters of the word limit was, I just sat down and wrote it and it was 1,000 words.
Right.
And then just start chopping and chopping and chopping. I had to lose my introduction. I had to lose a bunch of inner monologue. Like every word counts.
Yeah, and we counted every word.
Mhm.
Jen had to send a few back. What kind of themes would you like to see in the other writers' reads? Do you have any suggestions for themes?
Something about dogs.
Lori will win. Lori will win.
Do you always connect it to the coast?
Not, well, yeah, actually we have, I think, pretty much every time. We had, during the COVID, we had the pandemic. This was our theme, so it wasn't really connected to post pandemic. And the next year we had recovery. So that wasn't necessarily connected to the coast, but others we've had a view from the North Coast and some other kinds of coastal. But it doesn't have to. If you have any suggestions, please be sure to send us a little note and let us, let's consider that suggestion. Because we are always kind of sitting our thumbs going, okay, now what do we do? How do we make it even more interesting?
How about haystack?
A haystack.
That could be a haystack or it could be a rock. Could be something else.
Something
Could be a
else.
needle.
Yeah, play on words of some kind. Last year we had Hemingway at the beach. What would he say? Oh, and that really brought out. Jen, could you do me a favor, since I cannot really get up very well? Sure. Could you, how's that right? We have little gifts for our writers today. And we have cookies in the bag, so please, Thank you very much for all of your work and bringing in there and coming to see us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would turn this wall.
You want me to take one pass down?
Thanks a lot. That was fun.
Thanks for coming.